Peggy came home and found Eve sitting on the bed in the dark corner of the room. Eve tried to hide behind the veil she was wearing, but it didn't work well. She looked different now. Her face looked like it has been burned by fire.
How did you get in here?
Peggy asked. Eve stayed silent for a few seconds before she started talking.
I used to be just like you. Not very pretty compared to the others. Then I found a hidden closet in the woman's changing room at the mall, and everything changed.
Eve pulled out a shimmering compact and held it close to the light. Peggy quickly scanned the room looking for her.
Don't bother. This is yours.
Suddenly, Eve changed her appearance to look like the old woman who had given Peggy the sparkling powder. Peggy was crippled with fear. I once shared my feelings for a boy with a group of friends. Actually, they were bullies. They tricked me into telling him I loved him in front of everyone. I didn't know they planned to film it and show it online. After I confessed my feelings, do you know what I did? They laughed at me and ignored me. That was very humiliating. Every day I was reminded of how I, like an ugly duckling, had been rejected by someone I liked. One morning at school, my head was dunked in the toilet by my crush girlfriend and her friends. They did this because I tried to talk to him. I was so humiliated that I cried a lot. I left school and went to the mall. I needed a quiet place to be alone. I wished I could go back in time and never talk to this boy Dio. When I was crying in a fitting room at the mall, I accidentally fell into a closet. There, I found the succumbus who was trapped. The succumbus begged me to help her escape and promised that in exchange, she would grant. I asked her to turn back time, but she couldn't do that. Then she offered to make me incredibly beautiful and irresistible. This was a good trade, so I agreed. Apparently, succumbi are weak and can die if sunlight touches them. So I had to get some fabric to cover the windows and blinds to block the sunlight. She finally finished making the potion, and I then used that potion to create a powder for you. However, my instructions were simple. If you were benevolent, the powder's effects would last a long time. But you decided to betray the person who had been nothing but kind to you. In a fit of aggression, Eve threw the powder at the window, shattering it. Dust swirled in the wind as darkness engulfed the room.
I'm sorry, please.
Peggy whispered, tears welling up as she understood the depth of her desperation and the poor choices she had made. Meanwhile, Eve had vanished as quickly as she appeared. Peggy wasn't the most popular girl in college. She was below average looking and sometimes other girls were unkind to her. One evening, Peggy was shopping late. As she waited in line, a boy suddenly spoke up.
Let me pay for your items,
he said quickly and took cash out of his wallet, handing it to the cashier. Peggy thanked the kind stranger. Looking up, she met his gaze. He was incredibly handsome. His chest looked strong under his clean white shirt. When he smiled, his teeth were bright white. He said,
I am Brian. What's your name?
Peggy felt butterflies in her stomach. She stammered.
I am Peggy. Thank you so much for paying for my things.
Just then, a voice called from behind him.
Hey honey, are you finished shopping? I'm getting tired, let's go home.
Brian quickly turned to the woman and replied,
Yes, I'm now done. I was just helping this lady here. Peggy, meet my girlfriend Eve.
Brian said. Eve looked at Peggy for a moment, then forced a smile.
Hi,
she said simply. Peggy felt a knot of jealousy form in her stomach as she looked up at Eve. Eve was a stunning young woman, wearing a crop top and a miniskirt that showed off her toned body.
How could I have ever thought such a handsome guy would be interested in me? Stupid me.
Peggy thought to herself. She turned around and thanked Brian again. I was about to leave when Eve grabbed her hand.
Hey, we're having a party this Saturday. Why don't you join us? We live at 10 Adelana Street, right behind the market.
Peggy simply nodded and hurried away. Back home, Peggy couldn't stop thinking about Brian.
If it means seeing Brian again, I'm okay with going to the party.
She thought, blushing as she drifted up to sleep, picturing a romantic moment with Brian. Peggy arrived at the party and found a very busy Eve. Unfortunately, Brian was out of the country.
Hey Peggy, thanks for coming. Can you help me decorate before the party starts?
Eve asked, disappointed that Brian wasn't there. Peggy reluctantly agreed and helped with the decorations. When Eve's friend made fun of Peggy's appearance, Eve wasn't afraid. She walked over to them and told them their behavior was rude. Eve then apologized to Peggy for her friend's rudeness.
I'm sorry about my friends. They were not nice. So I'll make it up to you. Would you like to go to the mall tomorrow? My treat.
Eve said, Peggy has never been treated kindly by another girl, especially a pretty one. Because of that, she said yes. This was the beginning of a big change in Peggy's life. Peggy came home after shopping with Eve. As soon as she walked in, she took a small compact powder out of her purse. She was thinking about the old woman who had taken her to a hidden room in the clothing store.
This powder can make you prettier than anyone you admire.
The old woman had said. Peggy had looked around the strange shop. It was dusty, filled with cobwebs, and had so many old furnitures. She shook her head.
I don't have any money to pay for this. I need to leave now. My friend must be worried and looking for me.
Peggy said as the old woman chuckled softly.
It's free. I am giving it to you as a gift. Don't you want to be the center of attention? Be liked by everyone and get invited to all the parties. You won't be embarrassed or made fun of anymore. There is a warning. The powder's effects only last a few hours. To activate it, it would use a bit of your life force, making you weak yet pretty. But only someone with a kind heart can make the positive effects last longer. So stay benevolent.
Peggy looked in the mirror as she dabbed a bit of the powder on her skin, but nothing changed. Disappointed, she waited for 30 minutes. Then she threw the powder on the table. She muttered,
It was stupid of me to believe a powder would make me beautiful, especially one from a strange old lady.
She went to bed feeling sad. The next morning, Peggy woke up and was about to start her housework when she saw a surprising reflection in the mirror. It was a beautiful young woman. Peggy screamed with happiness. She decided to go for a walk. Everyone stared at Peggy as she took a stroll. People who used to be unkind to her were now nice to her. She felt happy and decided to visit her friend Eve. Brian opened the door when Peggy arrived. He was surprised by her new look.
Did you get something done?
As curious like a child, Peggy smiled sarcastically and winked.
Maybe a little. Is Eve home?
This snapped Brian back to reality. He stammered and shook his head.
No. She's not. She went to visit her mother and will be back at sunset.
Well then, I'll wait for her and tell you all about the procedures I had done.
Peggy said with a wink again at the speechless Brian. Then she walked into the apartment. At sunset, Eve did arrive home. She knocked on the door many times but no one answered. Finally, she used her key to unlock the door. Eve walked in on Brian, her fiancé, in bed with another woman. She screamed.
How dare you? Who is she?
Brian, in his defense, explained.
Don't you remember her? She's Peggy, your friend.
As he tries to calm angry Eve, Eve furiously turned to Peggy.
You bitch. What are you doing in my fiance's bed? I thought we were friends.
Eve lounged at Peggy as Brian held her back.
We did nothing together. I swear. Please calm down.
Peggy felt weak and remembered the magic powder needed her life force to work.
She grabbed her things and fled home. Exhausted, she collapsed on the floor upon arrival. The next day, Peggy wakes up incredibly weak and remembers the previous night's event. Smiling, she looks in the mirror and is shocked by her old reflection. She quickly applies the magic powder, which instantly transforms each touched area into a more beautiful version. Despite her weakness, Peggy enjoys the attention her newfound beauty brings, until Eve appeared mysteriously in her room. She felt awful after Eve left. She decided to go to Eve's place and apologize. When Peggy arrived, Eve was already at the door looking beautiful again. She begged Eve to forgive her. Eve smiled and gave Peggy a big hug. Then she invited Peggy inside the apartment. As Peggy sat on the couch, drinking tea, a question kept bothering her. Finally, she asked,
Permit me to ask Eve, but where is Brian? I haven't seen him in a while.
Eve smirked.
Oh, that's true. Actually, he volunteered to be the main course for tonight's dinner. Care for some pork?
Pig grunted in the other room, making Peggy's heart thump. Slowly, her legs felt heavy. As she tried to stand, she fell and turned to stone. Eve let out a creepy laugh and said,
You want him? You can be a statue while he remains a pig. I am the succubus, and the girl who saved me also betrayed me like you did. On the bright side, she made a good ingredient for the potion, and her emotions made me more human, protecting me from the sun. There is something about you humans and betrayal. Nothing is ever enough, is it? To think I was going to leave evil behind and do good things after I arrived on Earth. But you all have a way of turning on me.
Eve spoke as Peggy struggled to move, but her muscles wouldn't obey. She stood frozen and stone, watching Eve pull out a sad-looking pig with a tag that said Brian.
Time for soup and more potion. I have to keep this body young and pretty, you know.
Eve said as she placed a large cauldron over a fire.